My girlfriend and I were visiting my sister, who lived in a 200-year-old home in western Massachusetts that used to be a brothel. We were staying in her guest room, which had recently had a new carpet installed that was rather tall and stiff. This made it quite difficult to open and shut the door. I recall using my body weight to force it shut and needing to yank it open. As I'm trying to fall asleep that night, I hear something bump the door from the hallway. I assume this was my sister, her boyfriend, or their dog. A few minutes later, I hear something at the door again, but this time the knob turns. I freeze as I see the knob slowly turning and the door beginning to open, until I see a shape resembling the silhouette of a young girl. The thing is, the only child in the house is an infant. I immediately roll over onto my side, close my eyes, and attempt to convince myself that what I saw was a silhouette of the dog. I don't mention this to my girlfriend or my sister because I don't want to alarm anyone. Well, fast forward a few months, my girlfriend and I are returning to western Massachusetts to attend my sister's wedding, and we will be staying in the same room as last time. On the plane, my girlfriend says,
"I have something I feel I should tell you about your sister's house."
I immediately know where she's going with this. As it turns out, she was awake when the door opened, but she got a better look than I did. She described seeing a girl of about 5 or 6, wearing a Victorian-style nightgown, open the door and stare at her in the eyes with a penetrating intensity before my girlfriend looked away. I then tell her my story, and we decide to make sure we drink enough to pass out every single night so we won't be awake if we are visited. My family owns a cottage on a lake. This lake had a cottage on it 80 years ago where 3 teenage girls died when it burned down. My grandmother was at her cottage at the time and heard the screams from across the lake. Every year around the date, early August I believe, she could still hear the screams. It was just a form of PTSD, right? Wrong. My father, who hasn't even been born yet when the fire happened, started hearing the screams when he was young. Out of 4 kids, he was the only one to hear them. And when I was younger, I started hearing them too. The screams echo across the lake, but only my dad and I seem to hear them. It's absolutely terrifying. After confronting my dad about this, and him telling me about everything, the fire, my grandmother, and etc., he said to never go near the old fireplace, still standing after so long, around the date, because the closer you get, the louder the screams. Now, I try to avoid our cottage at around early August. On a side note, my dad has a theory as to why we are the only ones that can hear the screams. My grandmother was supposed to stay the night and would have died, but it doesn't explain why my dad and I are the only ones that can hear it. When I was really young, probably around 8 to 10 years old, I caught chickenpox. I woke up in the middle of the night, one night, and called for my mom because little kids can't do anything for themselves when they're sick. A woman came into my bed and sat on my bed and stroked my hair until I fell asleep. For whatever reason, I thought it was my grandmother, but she was dressed funny. When I woke up the next morning, I went downstairs for breakfast and asked where my grandma was. And naturally, my mom told me that she was at her house like she always was. The thing is, my grandma doesn't live with us. I told my mom she'd been in my room the night before, and my mom laughed, saying that I had been dreaming, maybe because I miss her so much. However, my aunt, who kind of believes in more paranormal stuff, was babysitting me that day. The upside to the chicken pox meant that there was no school for me, and I told her the story. She asked me to describe the weird outfit, and it was a nurse's outfit from the 50s or early 60s. My family knew the previous owners of the house. The wife was a nurse in the 50s who had died a few months previously. Can I say with 100% certainty that I had an encounter with a spirit? No, but it's certainly a spooky coincidence. On Monday, I started to worry about my grandpa. I don't know why, but the moment of worry passed, and I went about on my day. Later on, I posted an article about automated lawnmowers, saying that my grandpa would love this, since taking care of his yard was his hobby. Literally, right after I hit share, my dad calls me. We all know this feeling. It's a drop in your stomach when you know something absolutely terrible has happened, or it's about to. The feeling that your world has changed and there's nothing you can do. He tells me that my grandpa was rushed to the hospital with a bladder infection followed by several heart attacks, but he's still alive. I didn't think anything about worrying earlier, at least until I woke up the next morning. My dream that night was what made it click in my head. In the dream, I was sitting in my grandpa's shed watching something, and he sits down next to me. Without any pretense, he starts talking. The next few weeks are gonna be hard, and they will test you. Don't worry about me. In a few hours, I won't have any use for it. We ended up spending what seemed like hours and hours talking about a lot of personal things. Things I honestly didn't know or didn't remember about my grandpa. Most of which my dad and his brother have confirmed to be true. Although a little exaggerated, apparently. My grandpa didn't die until around noon on Tuesday, pretty much a few hours after my dream. I'm not a religious person, nor will I be. But what the heck? I know the subconscious mind can do things like this. But some of the details he told me about his life are things I wasn't there for, or even alive for. My grandpa, who was a tough-as-nails World War II Marine veteran, had a little stuffed bunny. He kept it out in the open, and when he would walk past it, thinking no one was looking, he would quietly and gently pet it like a dog. Because of his tough Marine veteran persona, it became an ongoing family joke. Anyways, a few years later, he did himself in. We all went to his house to deal with the police and the medical examiner and everything. We stayed in his house for the entire night. It had an overall creepy vibe because of what had happened, and we were all naturally very upset about it. We spoke to each other, struggling to try and make ourselves laugh and deal with his sudden passing. The strange thing was that we had all noticed that the stuffed bunny had been moving around the house. It would be in the dining room table, then next to the couch, and in the den an hour or two later. I thought that somebody in the house was messing around, remembering the joke between Grandpa and the bunny. But everyone swore that they had not touched it, so we all concluded that maybe Grandpa was playing jokes on us. Maybe trying to cheer us up. But if that was the case, it only creeped us out.